Michael Bell with you once again with the Christ Verse per Book Challenge, in which we're looking at a Christological, a messianic text out of each of the 66 books of the Bible, showing that Jesus is front and center. He's the protagonist. He's what the Bible is all about. And we've reached the book of Jeremiah, chapter 7, verse 11. Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? This is the question Jeremiah asks. Now, the cleansing of the temple, which is where Jesus goes in and he makes a whip out of cords, and he drives out the animals and the money changers, and he overthrows the tables, and coins go flying, and it's a great, incredible act of taking out all those who are doing business in the temple and guilty of sacrilege, of making temple worship a business. They're doing it for profit. And when Jesus sees this in Jerusalem, he takes it upon himself to rectify it. And this incident is mentioned in Matthew, in Mark, in Luke, and in John. Here's how Mark describes this situation. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. And in one of the other passages, it talks about how the disciples connected Psalm 69:9 with this text, where the psalmist says, for zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. So when Jesus enters into that situation, and you see how his Father's house is being treated for people's financial gain, how they've cheapened the house of prayer and twisted the good news for a here and now satisfaction. Zeal overtakes him. Those insults he receives personally. They're insulting his own Father, his heavenly Father, and so he feels insulted as well. And so he goes about to cleanse the temple. Back in the Jeremiah passage, we see that Jeremiah is worried about a situation that's very similar, that people are going to the temple, but they're not really interested in God and glorifying God and really praying and really confessing their sins. They're full of wickedness, and they've made temple worship a sham. Earlier in the chapter of Jeremiah 7, he says, do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. It's like just going to church, just going to the synagogue, just going to the temple, a place of worship is enough to make you a believer. And they take false refuge. And I believe that today we see this as rampant once again. People fill our churches who really don't know the Lord. And churches offering them a false salvation, a false sense of security, a cheap form of grace that makes them feel like they're fine with God, but in fact they're not. And the preaching and the teaching and the level of expectation is so low that they don't even feel the conviction of the Spirit. Here they are believing they're believers because they're at church, they're at a place of worship, but in fact, they're far from the Lord. 1 Peter chapter 4 says, for it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And if the righteous is scarcely saved, like it's hard for the righteous to be saved, what will become of the ungodly and the sinner? We see in Luke chapter 13, Jesus says, strive to enter through the narrow door. Strive. And here that the righteous is scarcely saved. Salvation by faith is not just this quick fix. It involves a striving, and it involves a marathon of faith, of running the race and fighting the good fight, as Paul himself described it. And yet people fill our churches who aren't being challenged in this way. And the sad thing is that if Jesus came to our churches, he would have to drive out the majority who don't really know Christ. And so Jesus, in his zeal for the Lord, is prefigured way back in Jeremiah. Now, if he's on every page of the Bible, shouldn't he be on every page of your life and mine?